Hello, and welcome to a new video. Today, guys, we are uploading the third video in the How to Climb playlist. Today's video is somewhat simple. Hopefully, it's gonna be a bit shorter than usual. Hopefully, I cannot make any promises. Uh, Look, if you have mastered the typings and you have a deep understanding of the team formation, which are the two videos that are before this one, you will be able to easily make a team. Now, making a team is actually quite essential. You can, of course, go watch other content creators, learn their teams, use them, etc. You might even have a great success. However, in order to develop team reading ability, you need experience. The experience majorly comes from building teams. Granted, building teams isn't something you do it on your own. However, I prefer if you do it in your head before you actually do simulation. Whenever we make a team, we go to PvPoke, select the leagues that we are making the team in, and we rate the team. We generate a rating for the team, tells us what is the core breaker for the team and stuff like that. However, if you want to develop an experience, try doing this before by your head and make the actual team before you actually go and simulate it. That's preferably the way to practice and to gain more experience. And really, it's very essential. Team reading, I will be talking after team building. I'll make a brief team building explanation, and then we will go to team reading. Team reading is quite well, you cannot really fully teach it. I can teach you some of the things, but even then, it's a guessing game. Of course, you get better at guessing regarding for it. Well, you need to be high in ELO, for example, in order to anticipate movements from your opponents. Lower ELO tend to do things randomly because they don't have these experience and these skills. So, for me at least, when I'm below to 400 to 300, something like that, I kind of wing it. I try to turn my brain off completely and just try to play, because if I try to anticipate teams, I know I'm gonna get fucked, because no way you can tell what team is what. Things are pretty random there, and this is why most of the players in this range stay in this range. It's not always the skill or the lack of experience. I mean, granted, if you don't have legend skills, you might have expert skills or veteran skills. But if you are stuck at ace, there is a great chance that your teams are not built well. And an unbalanced team will not get you anywhere. Might get you a positive set or two, but you're gonna get frustrated afterwards. And changing teams will not get you anywhere either. Granted, if you are a master and you have played all Pokemons and you are used to playing multiple teams, you can pull it off, but then again, you won't be really watching this channel if you have this level of skills, most probably, as we are, catering towards newer players. So in that case and in this scenario, try as much as possible to stick to one team. Alright, so let's make the intro as short as possible, and now let's go into actually how to build a team. Alright, whenever we get to the point of making a team, there is something I put myself and I actually use, and I also put it in all the, well, not all, the last one won't have it, but in general, when I make a top teams video, I tend to mention this. The shielding scenarios. It's very important when making a team, because it's not just the formation, it's the distribution of shields. If I pick two, for example, from the shield heroes, which are the Pokemon that require shields in order to perform well, and I put two of them in the same team, one of them will hoard all the shields and the other will be left without them, therefore will be absolutely useless. Granted, some cases it's actually good. For example, I use a team that has both Shadow Golbat as well as Shadow Dragonite with Stunfisk lead. I have uploaded the video before if you have watched it. The idea behind it is Dragonite has a role, which is to bait out ice and rock types. And in the zeros, as you know, for example, Dragonite has superpower. So superpower near KOs, it takes like 80+% or so of Bastiodon, for example. So I'd rather actually play the zeros in this specific scenario, because I want to either win switch or get shield advantage in order for my Golbat to have shield advantage and sweep afterwards. You can pull it off, but as long as you are knowing what you are doing, you know, it's not just random. But in most cases and in most scenarios, we tend to make a team that has at least one or two no shield heroes. These are Pokemons like Registeel, Clodsire, etc. These Pokemons tend to perform really well when shields are down, zeros. Zero shield scenario on both sides, of course. One shield scenario, they might perform well, of course, but two shield scenario, things kind of get tough. This happens for multiple reasons. One of them, for example, you have either no fast move pressure, some scenarios, for example, like Registeel, or you have charge moves that require a lot of energy. Also, Clodsire and Registeel, for example. Cresselia to some extent is like that. As you know, Mudshot and Psycho Cut and stuff like that are actually a clone. Also, I believe Poison Sting, as well as Thundershock and Fairy Wind. Yeah, these are all clones. These are the same move, but different type. This move generates energy greatly, but it doesn't apply damage pressure. So all in all, yeah, Pokemon that prefer zeros are actually Pokemon for multiple reasons, of course. Carming, for example, has a shitty fast move in terms of energy generating. So in the two shield scenarios, which means if your opponent has two shields, you probably won't even land a charge move in a lot of scenarios. So, you know, you get the point. You need 8 and 12. So you get the point. Not just no pressure. You can have a fast move pressure like Bastion as well, but it needs 7 for Stone Edge, 7 smackdowns. So it takes a lot. So in order to burn 2 shields, you need 14 plus, and you need another 7 to land one. You know, you get the point. No shield is a shield good at everything. Sorry, what is the good at everything section? Good at everything. These are Pokemon that perform if we are in zero shield scenario, in one shield scenario, and in two shield scenario. Regardless of the shielding scenario of the opponent, if you are in the same level of shields and in the same number of shields, you will perform greatly. Stuff like Landibaz, it has a high energy generating fast move and somewhat of a cheap to some extent charge moves. It performs well. Lickitung has a lot of bulk and has fast move pressure with Lick. Lick deals a lot of damage. Same applies to Lantern. It has both. You know, you get the point. Shadow Claw users and stuff like that, and Incinerate users. No shield heroes. Shield heroes are, as we said before, Pokemon that require 1 or 2 shields scenario in order to thrive. Dragonite and Dragonair, for example, are a great example of that, actually, because Dragon Breath is actually oppressive in terms of damage, but these Pokemons are absolutely glassy, so they cannot really take a hit. Even resisted damage, especially to Dragonite, which is even glassier than Dragonair, it cannot really take a resisted damage. Like a Scald from Whiscash, a normal Whiscash at that, will deal roughly around 60% or so. So, you know, you cannot really take a hit, but if you preserve the health enough, the fast move alone will destroy the opponent. And Dragon Breath isn't bad in terms of energy generation either. So, you know, or some Pokemons like Poliwrath. Poliwrath has a debuffing move. So when you go the 2 shield scenario, you are actually debuffing your opponent quite a lot. So when you are actually down shields and your opponent lands a move, it will not do a lot of damage. You probably have thrown like 2-3 moves, etc., you know. So you have debuffed them quite heavily. Alright, it's pretty simple. When you want to make a team, one of the teams I made when I made the video of the top Great League meta for this season, sorry if you watch this in later seasons and things have changed, you know, still the same concept applies. Most probably will apply. I made a team of Lantern, Lickitung, and Mandibuzz. It's my top performing team for the season. It's actually made of 3 good at everything Pokemons. Can work. It has kind of an ABB line, well, ABC line technically, but Lickitung has the role of baiting out Bastiodon, which ends up being good for you, and or G-Fisk or stuff like that. So, you know, it's an ABC with an ABB style. In short, if you want to make a team, make sure at least if you have a Pokemon like Dragonair, which will hoard all the shields, you have either 2 no shield heroes. You can make a team, for example, of Dragonair, I don't know, Clodsire and Registeel. This way you can ensure giving Dragonair all the shields, and the other 2 Pokemons will do well without them. Or at least, if not 2 no shield heroes, at least one shield no shield hero, and 1 good at everything Pokemon. This way you'll have 2 Pokemons that can have a play without there actually being shields for them, and ensuring saving shields for the shield hero. Sorry, I'm mixing things up a lot. I hope I didn't confuse anyone. Alright, so if you guys have any questions, if I didn't make it clear enough, I'm not really focusing a lot on this topic because I included in mostly all of my top teams video, and will do so in the future. So it's just there to give you an idea. You already know the types, you already know the formation, and now you have this in order to make a balanced team. That's all. Alright, now let's switch into the actual skill, which is team reading. Alright, team reading. Look, team reading is a gambling and a guessing game. One of the many factors that help you get a more accurate guess is watching YouTube. Lots of players, especially we are talking mid-season, below expert, and later on the season below legend, and even roughly around legend. Like anything that isn't way up in the leaderboard is mostly and greatly affected by content creators. So a content creator makes a team, you watch it, alright? Let's say a content creator popularized, let's say Yonkus, for example. He is a very influencing YouTuber. So let's say he makes a team. He made the team before actually of Swampert, I believe, for example, Sableye and Skarmory. That was a couple seasons ago. And the team was everywhere, like literally everywhere. So it was kind of obvious after you see it, for example, that you will guess the team formation and the backline. Same applies in this season, for example, when you see a Whiscash lead. When you see a Whiscash lead, there is a great chance of them having a Skarmory in the back. It's a very common and classic team. Knowing the classic teams and being up to date on content creators will help you a lot. However, this is up to you, of course. I need to focus on the things that I can, teach, not just gather. It's not just gathering information, it's actually quite more deep. I brought the teams that were used in the previous video, the team formation, and let's try to guess the team formation and the Pokemons depending on the behavior of the opponent. Okay, I made 3 random teams. I didn't give it too much thought, so we can think of it together. Else, I didn't want to script this, because if I script this, it's gonna seem a lot easier than what it actually is, and you will probably get frustrated because you aren't on the same level. And this is why, by the way, I don't edit my videos. I try not to edit my videos, because if I'm watching and I can't think straight, you cannot really think straight and think of the answer while playing, because it will be more stressful. So I try my best not to edit and not to make scripts and scenarios and stuff like that. So let's go with it. I'm leading Ferrothorn with Team 1, Ferrothorn, Jellicent, and Azu. Let's see. Versus Swampert, Lickitung, and Skarmory. I'm winning lead. They have to switch, of course. Now they switch into Lickitung because it's their safe swap. They cannot switch into their hard counter, because if they lose Skarmory, they kind of will no longer be able to do anything to Ferrothorn. Ferrothorn, by the way, hard counters Lickitung, but they have no other option, so they will swap into sorry, my English is bad. Swap into Lickitung. Now, what does this tell me? Lickitung is a very common safe swap, first things first, and as we said before, Swampert and Whiscash tend to have a Skarmory in the back. So my first initial thoughts would be that there is a Skarmory in the back. To be fair, that would be my initial thought even before they do anything, because just seeing Swampert suggests, or a Mudboy in general, suggests the existence of a Skarmory in the back. However, more precisely, let's talk about Lickitung. Lickitung, as well as Swampert, they both beat Lantern. However, Lickitung is weak to fighters. Swampert isn't precisely a counter for fighters. It does beat G-Fisk as well as Bastiodon. However, Lickitung doesn't really struggle much against G-Fisk after the EQ nerf. So, all in all, this isn't looking like a very solid core. So, my assumption would be that they need a hard answer for Grass. For example, Serperior. It beats both the lead as well as the safe swap. Granted, it's not an advantage beating, like it's a neutral matchup, but Serperior will have stab and strong moves, like Frenzy Plant, it's OP, so it will beat Lickitung. So yeah, for me at least, looking at that, Lickitung and Swampert in terms of typings don't really make a core. So my assumption would be this is an ABC team, alright, with Skarmory in the back. Now, let's say I'm facing them with the other team, team number 2, which is Registeel, as well as Azumarill and Pelipper. Now, I'm losing lead this time versus the Swampert. So I'm gonna have to switch out. I'm gonna swap into what? Basically, my Azu. I swap into Azu, they will respond with Lickitung. Same thing. I did bait out what really counters normally. Well, I failed to bait out, which will mean that at least they don't have a Lantern in the back. And same assumption as before, I'm gonna assume, of course, it's for the same reason that this is an ABC line. Granted, it's not very complicated. Third team, okay, third team is different because it's a neutral matchup in the lead. However, the third team is an ABB line from my side. The Umbreon and 2 Psychic in the back. So I need to swap into Cresselia in order to bait out a potential Sableye. So even in a neutral matchup, when you have an ABB line, you need to swap out. So once I swap into Crass, they will most probably in this scenario swap into Skarmory. Because, well, they shouldn't, of course, but most people tend to. Because Skarmory is a harder answer for Cresselia. However, the right play would be to swap into your Lickitung because Lickitung shouldn't face Umbreon. Umbreon walls Lickitung to some extent as it resists the main energy source of Lickitung, which is its fast move, the Lick. It's resisted on dark types, so the real play here will be for them to go to Lickitung. Regardless what they will do, again, as we said before, it's pretty common, pretty easy to guess. However, this is an ABC line. Let's switch into our games versus the second team now. Things will try to get a bit more complicated now. Okay, team 1 from our side, the Ferrothorn lead, versus Skarmory, Swampert, and you know what, the Whiscash. They have to stay. Granted, it's not a very dominant matchup for Skarmory. We have Thunder, we have access to Thunder. We are dealing resisted damage with double resisted damage because both steel and flying resist their lead, while their our grass, while they are dealing resisted damage because steel resists steel, so a single resistance. However, I'm an ABB line. I'm gonna swap into my water types because they take resisted damage from, or neutral, from Steel Wing. I'm probably gonna swap into my safe swap, which is Jellicent in this scenario, because I need to bait out a Lantern, potential Lantern. So I'm gonna swap out into my Jellicent here. If they swap right away, they will lose switch. Meaning, if I swap into Jellicent and they swap into either Swampert or Whiscash, they will lose. So, my opponent will most probably try to go for a Brave Bird before swapping out. Now, what will this tell me? It will tell me that they do not have a hard answer for water. This is why they are trying to bait, to throw. Now, if they were an ABC line and they had, for example, a common safe swap like Lickitung or Sableye, they'd have something to throw against my Jellicent. If they had a counter for me, they would have to throw against me. But if they come with Swampert, alright, it will mean simply that they have another common thing that loses to water. And Swampert should be their closer, for example, or Whiscash, etc. So if they use one of them, great chances are that they have another one like it, so an ABB line. I'm, for example, easily understood as well, because I was kind of in somewhat of a neutral matchup, and I did swap out into something that makes a core. For example, water beats fire, which is Ferrothorn is double weak to fire. Ferrothorn also as a steel type, it loses to fighting. We have two water types in the back that are resisting fighting moves, both fairy and ghost. Ghost double resist. So I did do a bait out. I did swap out into my Jellicent, which means that I'm trying to bait out a potential electric type. So it will be easy for them to guess as well that I have an ABB line as well as them, and I have another water. Now, what other water implies the same kind of resistance? Of course, it's Azu, because it's a fairy type. So they will guess most probably that I have an Azu in the back, and I will guess that they have either a Whiscash or a Swampert, depending on what they swap into. Now, different game. The team number 2 versus the team number 2 in the other section. I'm leading Registeel, they are leading Skarmory. Now, they will swap out because they have two answers in the back. Now, if they swap into Whiscash, when an ABB line swaps into what makes a core, there is 99% another core. When an ABB line, because if you have an ABC line, you don't swap into your hard counter. You swap into your safe swap or the less hard hitting Pokemon. So had they had a Lickitung or Sableye, for example, they would be forced to swap into Sableye, because if they have Skarmory, Sableye, and Swampert, and they swap into Swampert, I'm probably have a hard counter for Swampert in the back, because Registeel loses to Swampert. So if they swap into their hard counter, I'm gonna swap out, and this way they will no longer have a Pokemon for me. So this behavior doesn't make any sense. So we can say that they are not ABC. We can delete this. Had they swapped into Sableye, I'd say, for example, yeah, probably Whiscash in the back. Again, these are easy to see. Alright, but for me, in this scenario, I'm gonna guess that if they swapped into Whiscash, they probably have a Swampert or another Mudboy in the back, because this is their hard counter for Registeel. Because look, there is a rule. When you are facing a Pokemon, I'm gonna repeat. When you are facing a lead that you lose to in your lead, you swap into your least hard counter, not your hard counter. Because if you swap into your hard counter and you lose this hard counter, and you will probably lose a hard counter, because a team is always made to assay core. So if they have a lead that loses to your hard counter in the back, that means in their back they have a Pokemon that hard counters that Pokemon. So, for example, I have Pelipper. Pelipper hard counters to some extent. Well, not to some extent, actually. It hard counters Swampert. So, if they only have Swampert and they swap into it, I'm gonna swap into my Pelipper, I'm gonna destroy Swampert, and they no longer can deal with my Registeel, effectively at least. So, gaining switch will not matter in this position. So, again, we will make the assumption that they have another Mudboy, and we will play based on that, which is to maintain alignment under any circumstance. Now let's say I'm in the third team, which is Umbreon and Double Psychic, versus team number 2, which is Skarmory lead. Again, this is a neutral lead. Now, in this scenario, I'm ABB and they are ABB. So, one of us has to swap out. I cannot swap out in this scenario. Why? Because even though I'm an ABB with Umbreon as well as Cresselia and what's its name? Deoxys. Yeah, I'm actually in a top position because Cresselia is actually weak to Skarmory. So this isn't by any means a good team, because even though Deoxys beats Skarmory, Cresselia doesn't. So I'm now in a tough position because I cannot swap out in order to bait out a potential ghost, which can be present with a Skarmory lead. So, however, if I don't swap out, they will have to swap out, because they need to bait out a potential threat, which is a grass. If I have a grass type, and with Umbreon you can have a the starter, the grass starter, what's his name? The first gen. Venusaur, yeah. Shadow Venusaur is actually quite common with Umbreon because it beats Azu, it beats fairies, and it, as a poison type, it resists fighting. So it's actually quite common with Umbreon. So they need to swap out, because if they lose their Skarmory, and I have, for example, Venusaur in the back, Venusaur with 2 shields can farm down both Pokemon, both Swampert as well as Whiscash. So they cannot risk that. So they will have to swap out. Now I'm seeing a Skarmory lead, and my opponent suddenly in a neutral matchup swaps into Whiscash. What does that tell me? This is a core. Whiscash and Skarmory is a core. So what does that tell me? It tells me simply that this is an ABB line. Alright, now let's switch back into our team number 1, Ferrothorn lead, versus the third team, which is a Swampert as well as a Skarmory and Whiscash. Now, I win lead versus Swampert. So my initial thinking would be that Swampert will swap out right away. However, if Swampert is staying, what does that mean? It means that they cannot swap out because they are ABA weak to Ferrothorn. This is it. Alright? Because if they swap out, let's say I have Ferrothorn, they swap. What do they swap to? They cannot swap into Whiscash because it's the same shit basically as Swampert versus Ferrothorn. So if they want to swap, their only swap is to swap into Skarmory. Now I'm probably gonna have a Pokemon that either walls Skarmory, walls, well, flying types in general, or at least has neutral matchup. Either way, they're gonna lose their Skarmory. And then what? How are they supposed to deal with Ferrothorn? So they are forced to stay in and let Swampert go. After that, they come with Skarmory. This way, if I swap out of Ferrothorn, they can swap Zen into Whiscash, making sure that this way Whiscash doesn't get aligned to Ferrothorn. So if they are staying in, it means simply that this is an ABA line, sorry, an ABA line. Especially if they come with Skarmory afterwards, I'm gonna guess that they have another Pokemon afterwards that is also weak to grass. So I'm gonna try to save, like after beating Swampert in this scenario, when they come into Skarmory, I'm gonna swap out. Even if they swap into their own Whiscash, I'm still gonna be fine in this scenario, of course, in this because I hard countered them, technically. But in general, I'm gonna swap out and I'm gonna preserve my Ferrothorn because I know that not only it beats Swampert, it's gonna beat something in the back. So I need to preserve it. Alright, this is the thinking. Alright, now if I'm with team number 2, this is a way to find an ABA team. Basically, ABA team in general, as we said in the previous video, these are Pokemon that don't swap out in the lead. But they also tend to not shield. If they are shielding, they are most probably the AAB team we talked about before, which is a lead that plays the role of the safe swap, but without swapping. It ensures alignment from the lead rather than from a safe swap, because it's easier to get a good, it's up to randomness basically, to get a good matchup in the lead rather than as a safe swap. They always have an option to respond to your save, so it's better this way. Anyway, let's get to team number 2. I'm having Registeel lead versus a Swampert in the third team. Okay, I'm gonna have to swap out. I swapped into Azu. Now, I swapped into Azu, and what can they do? They can only either stay and soften Azu, or they can swap into their Skarmory in order to get Skarmory out of the way. Now, what does this tell me? It tells me that unlike the previous one, which is the play to go into Lickitung, you know, the difference between me guessing the team, if it's an ABC or an ABB, etc. In the first matchup, if you remember, when I swapped into Azu, they were forced to swap into their safe swap, which is Licky. Even if they wanted to initiate it, it's the same. They will respond with Licky. However, now they have responded with a core. It means that they either have an ABB line or they have an ABA line. In this particular scenario, you cannot really guess. For example, they can have another flyer and it's an ABB line, for example, maybe a Mandibuzz or stuff like that. Or they can have an ABA line, or anything for that matter, maybe an ABC that doesn't wanna see Azu. like if they have a Sableye in the back and it's an ABC line even, you cannot really guess it right away. You can only play by hunch, you know. So this is a very tricky situation. This is why I say it's a guessing game. You cannot really ensure, no one really can ensure what is the opponent's team. It's just a guessing, but you can enhance the way you guess based on your experience, based on knowing the Pokemons, based on watching content creators, etc. And based, of course, on a bit of analysis. Now, let's say I'm in the third team, an ABB line of my own versus an ABA. Now, I have Umbreon lead versus Swampert. This is a very neutral matchup. Now, when I see an Umbreon and Swampert lead, I'm gonna assume that, of course, they have a Skarmory in the back. So for me, switching into Cresselia in this situation is not really playable. And switching into Deoxys isn't actually favorable because unless you are leading with Deoxys is tricky to play. Because once you throw the Psycho Boost, you are double debuffed. Your attack is 2 stages debuffed. So you kind of no longer can do damage and you are stuck because you are locked in this matchup. So things get tricky pretty fast. So I'm forced to stay probably in this situation, or at least try to soften up the lead. Maybe try to make a catch on Cresselia, on Deoxys, because Cresselia needs to stay away from Skarmory in the back. So I really don't have a play against it actually. Now I'm thinking I'm gonna top left. Very tricky, but probably I'm gonna try to win lead in this scenario. And I'm gonna invest actually shields in order to win lead. I believe I can win. Okay, not so sure because Swampert is actually pretty overpowered. I need to look into simulation later on, but yeah. So I cannot really guess if they are ABA, ABB, ABC because they are in the dominant seat of this matchup. I prefer, I should have probably picked the third team to be something that is, you know, more in the line of elemental stuff rather than, you know, psychic and stuff like that. But hey, I picked them randomly. Alright, so this is it basically. Now let's go into the fourth team. I'm leading Ferrothorn, and they are leading Shadow Dragonair. Now, on paper, this is a neutral matchup because unless I have Flash Cannon, they will probably be taking resisted damage from all my moves. Assuming Thunder, of course, is the move I'm using. So I have only one play, which is to swap out. I'm gonna swap into Jellicent. Now, if I swap into Jellicent, they don't really have an answer for Jellicent. However, they need to win lead. So if I swap into Jellicent, which is my safe swap probably in this team, they need to ensure, I mean absolutely ensure, that they keep a switch because they know I have a Ferrothorn, and if my Ferrothorn gets aligned to their backline, which is the Whiscash, then they are KO'd. So what they will do is they will go 2 shields down and try to win switch. This will tell me that 1, they have at least a Pokemon in the back that doesn't want to see my Ferrothorn, because they only know 2 Pokemons I've used so far, and they are trying their best to keep alignment. So this tells me that Ferrothorn, if I get alignment, is gonna be helpful in the back. Second, it tells me that they are not an ABB team by any means, because if they are, let's say for example, an ABB team with a lead of Dragon, what does Dragon loses to? It loses normally to Steel, and it loses to well, Fairy, so you cannot really have a fighter, for example, in the back. Steel and Fairy. A common Pokemon would be a Fire, probably. So if they had an ABB line and they saw my lead, they wouldn't essentially swap out. They would actually essentially swap out, meaning that if I had a Ferrothorn and they stayed in, that they are not an ABB team, because they should have at least a Fire in the back that can deal with the weaknesses of the Dragon. So them not swapping out right away into their hard counter for Ferrothorn itself tells me that this isn't an ABB line. Okay? They can probably have a... Well, no, this is it basically, yeah. So it's not an ABB line. Had they even had a, I don't know, a Registeel in the back, they would have swapped and saved their Dragonair. So them being an ABB line is out of the picture. Now, me swapping into Jellicent will mean that they don't either have a clear answer for Jellicent. Alright? So them swapping will at least tell me what did I get from this. I get that they have a Pokemon in the back that is weak to Ferrothorn. This is why they are investing shield, and even though they only saw 2 Pokemons, they want to maintain shields. It also told me that they don't have a clear answer for Jellicent. So most probably they don't have a clear answer for Azu either. Although in this situation, Skarmory can do better versus Azu than versus my Jellicent. So they don't have a Registeel. This I can get. So it's not, again, an ABB line. Because had they had a Registeel in the back, they would bring it right away. So it's not Dragon Double Steel. It could still be, though, that they have a Fire in the back, and this could still be an ABC line. However, if they have a Fire in the back, then they need to align the Fire into Ferrothorn. So this will make their motivation quite different in this scenario. So yeah, quite tricky. Again, we cannot really fully guess it, but we can still guess it to some extent. However, in the second team, I'm leading Registeel versus their Shadow Dragon. And they are trying to invest 2 shields in order to win lead. What does this tell me? They are 1, ABA weak, 2, Registeel. Now, this is off the bat, of course. They are ABA weak, but they are investing 2 shields on Dragonair. Now, what does this tell me? Tells me that this isn't an ABA team. Because in an ABA team, when you lose lead, what you will do is you will not use shields and try to either soft lose or to grab a shield. Also, Dragonair isn't a good ABA lead by any means. At all, because it's not good at grabbing shields. It's good at getting 2 shields and investing them. So just seeing Dragonair in the lead, I assume this. You know? And them not swapping out because I have Registeel technically. I have a Steel answer for Dragonair. It means they are ABA weak to it. So, what is the assumption? If they are spending shields, it's probably an AAB line rather than an ABA line, which is totally different because if it was an ABA line, like ABA line and AAB line are both gonna have an ABA weakness to some certain Pokemons. In this scenario, for example, it's Registeel. So, if they had a Dragonite in the back, it will make it an ABA team. And in this scenario, they have a Whiscash, it's an AAB team. But in both scenarios, they lose lead. However, if they had a Dragonite in the back, they will soft lose this without using any shields. If they are an AAB line, they will use a shield or 2 even in order to fast move down the Registeel. I'm not so sure how this will work out, but again, don't underestimate Shadow Dragonair in the 2 shield scenario. This is all I can say. Now, this way I can guess probably, especially this season, because there is a famous line of Dragonair, Lantern, and Skarmory. So I know Skarmory is weak to Registeel, so them not swapping out will probably tell me that, yeah, this is the team. This is, they have either Whiscash or Lantern in the back. Alright, now I'm having a third team, which is Umbreon versus Dragonair. Now, I have an ABB line, so of course I'm gonna try, as usual, to bait out a Pokemon. If I'm gonna stay, not gonna swap right away, because I need to observe the behavior of my opponent. If my opponent is staying in, what does it mean? It means normally when your opponent is staying in, and especially if it's a bad situation, that they probably are trying to catch. Now, so even in this scenario, neutral scenario, they might be trying to catch. So I'm not gonna throw right away. I'm just gonna stay for a while and observe their behavior. If they swap out, it will probably mean, depending of course on what they swap into. If they swap into Skarmory, for example, in this scenario, what am I gonna assume is that they have 2 steals in the back, and they are trying to bait out a potential fire, a potential, I don't know, something that beat both steel in this meta. Maybe they have 2 flyers, 2 flying, no, Celesteela basically. Yeah, not gonna happen. Anyway, you get the point, depending on what they swap into. However, they, as an AAB line, will stay in. So I'm gonna stay in for a while, then I'm gonna swap. I'm gonna swap into Cresselia. Their answer for Cresselia is actually Skarmory, so they will swap into Skarmory. Now, had they been an ABB line, which means if they had both Registeel, for example, and Skarmory, they would probably have swapped into Skarmory already. I observed this behavior, so this isn't an ABB team. However, they swapped into Skarmory. Alright, it counters Cresselia, I did take it out, etc. However, what does this mean? Because Skarmory can form somewhat of a core with Dragonair, and still they didn't swap out, so it's an ABA, ABB, AB style. I have to take out the potential ABB line, and the rest is up to guessing, of course, at this point. Now, they will win easily, they will stay in. I'm gonna have to come back with one Pokemon. I'll probably come back in this scenario, I guess, with Deoxys and farm them all the way down. This way I can throw a move and then go out. Yeah, it's a tough scenario, by the way, in this game. I don't like the Sword team, don't use it. Don't you ever use it. But yeah, you get the point. We cannot fully analyze everything, and I'm probably quite exhausted because I've been recording for 30 minutes straight. But you get the point. We are just guessing here. We can guess a few things with lots of information at our hand, both analytical, both information from content, both expectation, etc. Both classic teams that are known. And this is the drawback, by the way, to using classic teams, is that your opponent will always know what they are. I tried, for example, this season to play a team of Whiscash, as well as Toxapex and Talonflame. Even though I didn't have the usual Skarmory and I thought I'm innovative and stuff like that, in core, Toxapex will bait out a Bastiodon. So, Skarmory, just like Talonflame, doesn't want to see a Bastiodon. So when I was swapping out and baiting out the Bastiodon, my opponent, after taking out my Toxapex, were switching out of Bastiodon because they knew that they can't let me farm it down with Whiscash, because to them I have Skarmory in the back. So even though their Bastiodon is somewhat low from facing my Toxapex, it still has value. It can still beat Skarmory, and they have two other Pokemons, So they can swap out again, take the Whiscash out somehow with one Pokemon, or depending on what I'm gonna get, and still align two other Pokemons to one of them. So when you use either a classic team or even a build-up on a classic team, your opponent is gonna read you and will destroy you. So in this team, for example, in these scenarios, if my opponent will let me take their Bastiodon out, I'm gonna sweep with Talonflame. But just because they can anticipate my team, they save their Bastiodon, which has like 20% health, but this is still more than enough to take out my Talonflame. So, you actually being able to anticipate and read a team correctly, this is a huge advantage in terms of competitive play. But again, it needs very much practice, it needs experience, and on top of that, it has lots of drawbacks. And one of these drawbacks is that it's like a sword that has two edges, if you know the saying. It means that it could either get you an advantage, or it could actually set you on a wrong path to some extent. I mean, granted, if you don't do team reading at all, you're gonna do random things, so it's still up to luck. But in lower elo, trying to anticipate a team can be quite tricky, because you face mostly some random bullshit go kind of teams, just made randomly. They don't make much sense, and you end up frustrated as fuck and wanna punch a wall. So I try my best when I'm playing in lower elo or at the start of the season to just chill out and not pay too much attention to these details. But if you want to reach legend and you want to go the long run and the long way, you need this skill. You need team reading skill, and you need to practice it. And the best way to practice it and to be able to anticipate teams is to build your own teams. Not saying don't watch content, and I'm not saying also watch content because I make content. Watch anybody's content, but mostly watch people who are actually influencing, so don't watch my content in that context. Watch someone who actually has an influence on the meta. Keep up, always know the teams that are circulating around, and at the same time build your own teams. One, this way they will not be easily anticipated, because when you use a content creator's team, you'll be easily anticipated because people will know the team. The same way you will know that team if they are using one. At the same time, it will make you think easier and faster into the opponent's team, because you are used to doing this brainstorming type of style. Alright, so I hope you guys are enjoying the series so far. I'm trying my best to give my knowledge in a not so boring way. Also, I feel it's tending to be a bit boring, but I don't have enough time nor skills to actually make quite some fancy editing to make you amused while you are listening to this. I'm sorry for that. If you are enjoying the content though, consider liking, consider subscribing, and most importantly, consider commenting. Feedback, guys, feedback is very essential to me as a person. When I see a feedback on my work, I like it. And most importantly, how can I improve? Because you can always improve, especially when you are starting out. So I prefer to see as many feedback as possible, negative, positive, I really don't care, it doesn't matter to me much. Just write something if you think it will change the course or alter the course of the videos we are making. With that being said, see you guys on the next one. Take care of yourselves. Let's make the next season our season, and let's push. Good luck, guys. Bye bye.